Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So you sent over this excerpt, Chapter 5, Civic Education, incorrectdemocracy.pdf, and it really sparked some thinking.
Yes.
It got us considering how, in a direct democracy, where everyone gets a say, education has to be more than just, well, facts and figures.
Exactly. It's about wisdom, empathy, civic readiness, really.
Right. You need that critical thinking, sure, but also the ability to actually talk to each other meaningfully, especially when we disagree.
Mm-hmm. That dialogue piece is key.
So our mission today, I guess, is to dig into what that kind of civic education looks like, what's the structure, and importantly, what does the research say? Does it actually work?
Precisely. The chapter lays out this idea that for direct democracy to really function well, you need citizens educated in a particular way. We want to give listeners a good grasp of those core principles, drawing from the material you sent, kind of a shortcut to the main ideas.
Okay, good plan. Let's start with a real-world example, maybe. Finland often comes up. They're known for academics, but their system seems quite holistic, civic-minded even. What makes Finland relevant here?
Well, what's interesting about Finland is their whole approach. It's less about hitting benchmarks on standardized tests.
Which they don't really have in basic ed, right?
Right. No national standardized tests there. Instead, their curriculum focuses on these 7 broad competencies. They call them transversal skills.
Transversal skills like what?
Things like thinking and learning how to learn, cultural competence, interaction, self-expression, even ICT skills, working life competence, entrepreneurship, and crucially, participation, involvement, building a sustainable future.
Wow, okay, so those aren't separate classes.
No, they're woven into everything. The goal is really about developing the whole person, someone ethically responsible, ready for society.
So the insight is that focusing holistically, rather than just on test scores, creates better-rounded citizens.
Exactly. And it means even their, let's say, lower performing schools, academically speaking, still manage to prepare students pretty well for civic life.
That lack of standardized testing, it says a lot about trust, doesn't it?
It really does. Huge trust in teachers. They have autonomy to use methods like phenomenon-based learning.
Phenomenon-based learning.
Yeah, it's like project-based learning, but focused on real-world topics or complex issues. It encourages deep understanding, application, not just memorizing stuff.
Okay, so Finland gives us one model.
Yeah.
What about others? The chapter mentions Montessori too, right? How does that fit?
Yes, Montessori aligns surprisingly well. It's used all over the world, of course.
Right, you have those multi-age classrooms, kids guiding their own learning.
Yeah.
It's not just academics there either, is it?
Not at all. Hands-on exploration is big, yes, but there's a really strong emphasis on empathy, independence too.
And does that translate into civic skills?
Well, research suggests it does. Montessori students often show higher levels of social responsibility, empathy, collaboration compared to more traditional settings.
Interesting. Specific findings.
Yeah. There was one study showing more empathy and also more pro-social behavior, helping, sharing in Montessori kids.
Okay.
And their focus on individuality, but also peace, education, respect, resolving conflicts that seems directly relevant to nurturing, well, compassionate citizens.
So the self-direction and collaboration from a young age helps build these empathetic, responsible learners.
That seems to be the idea. Cultivating it early pays off later in civic engagement.
Makes sense. Now, what about older students? High school, university level. The chapter talks about interdisciplinary and project-based learning, PBL.
Right, PBL. This becomes really valuable as things get more complex.
Because it breaks down those subject silos, gets students working on real problems.
Exactly. And the research backs it up. PBL isn't just good for learning the subject matter. It builds those transversal skills we talked about: teamwork, communication, problem solving, vital stuff.
Like that university example.
Yeah, the technical university where students from different fields tackled a city's environmental issue. They loved it, apparently. Really developed collaboration skills, applied critical thinking to something tangible.
That's a great illustration. Learning by doing.
Precisely. And it's not just educators who see the value. Employers increasingly want those skills: analysis, critical thinking, teamwork, sometimes even more than specific degree knowledge.
That tracks with what we hear.
And Finland pops up again here with their phenomenon learning. It links education directly to societal themes.
So, like real civic practice.
Kind of. Students might design a community garden or propose policy changes. It gives them direct experience with democratic participation, understanding systems. It mirrors how direct democracy itself needs to work, integrating views, tackling real problems together.
So Finland, Montessori, PBL. They all point beyond just facts.
Definitely. And there's solid research supporting this broader view. Let's talk about social-emotional learning, SEL. That's become huge.
Right, SEL. Teaching self-awareness, empathy, communication, making responsible choices. Skills for being part of a community, educating the whole child.
Exactly that. There's a wide consensus now that you have to educate the whole child, including these skills, to foster respectful, contributing citizens.
Yeah, and the research is positive.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Meta-analyses, combining results from lots of studies show that good SEL programs significantly boost pro-social behavior, positive attitudes.
So more cooperation, better conflict resolution.
Yes, more helping, sharing, listening, better peer relationships, and interestingly, less negative behavior like aggression or bullying. It creates a better foundation for positive civic engagement down the road. And there's even this newer idea of transformative SEL, which links these skills directly to justice issues, empowering students to tackle social inequities.
Wow, okay. That feels incredibly relevant. Now, another huge piece in today's world has to be media literacy, right?
Oh, absolutely critical. In an age of, well, constant information and misinformation, citizens need to be critical consumers.
So media literacy education teaches how to access, analyze, evaluate information, spot the fake stuff.
That's the core of it. And the good news is it seems to work.
Really?
Yeah, a big 2023 meta-analysis found media literacy interventions generally make people more resilient to misinformation. They get better at spotting false info, and crucially, they're less likely to share it.
That is encouraging. Even short interventions help.
Studies suggest even short programs can increase skepticism towards dodgy claims. They teach basics like, cross-checking sources, recognizing bias, understanding how algorithms might influence what you see.
Vital skills.
As the UN Secretary General said, we need education that helps people tell fact from conspiracy, basically. Respect evidence.
So media literacy isn't a one-off thing, it's ongoing.
Exactly. Which brings us neatly to lifelong learning.
Right. Education doesn't stop after school. Especially in a direct democracy where issues constantly evolve.
You've got to stay civically fit, you could say. Keep those civic muscles working.
I like that. Is there evidence connecting adult learning and engagement?
Yes, quite consistently. Adults involved in ongoing learning tend to vote more, volunteer more, be more active in their communities.
Keeps people informed, curious, engaged.
Precisely. And again, look at Finland. They prioritize free adult education, see it as an investment in social cohesion, democracy. They have really high participation rates. It empowers people to adapt, engage with current knowledge.
Okay. And in diverse societies like ours, understanding different cultures, different viewpoints, that must be crucial too.
Absolutely essential. Learning about different cultures, perspectives, histories, it builds empathy, the capacity to cooperate.
It has some understanding.
Exactly. Research shows that education, bringing together diverse groups culturally, socioeconomically, promotes inclusivity, sharpens critical thinking about society. You see issues from more angles, develop respect.
Like global citizenship education.
That's part of it. Instilling shared responsibility for global issues. Studies, including one from 2024 mentioned in the source, show cross-cultural education prepares students to be effective global citizens. These skills, communicating across differences, working in diverse teams, help bridge divides locally too, foster social cohesion.
And finally, these democratic schooling models. Empowering learners themselves.
Yes. Things like peer-to-peer learning. Students learn from each other, developing communication, teamwork, leadership along the way.
And actual democratic structures within the school.
Right. School meetings, student councils where students have a real voice in decisions. They experience democracy firsthand, debating, voting, taking responsibility.
Like a training ground.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Research suggests these schools foster higher levels of democratic competence. Graduates often talk about learning responsibility, respecting other voices, the practicalities of making decisions together. Real empowerment.
Okay, so we've seen all these different pieces. How does the chapter suggest bringing them together? It outlines a framework, right, for lifelong civic capability.
It does. A comprehensive framework emphasizing continuous learning. The goal is broad critical thinking, analytical, ethical, deliberative understanding systems.
So what are the main pillars?
First, a core curriculum, foundational skills for critical engagement. Logic, reasoning, argument analysis, spotting fallacies, evaluating evidence, building sound arguments, crucial for assessing proposals, debates.
Absolutely.
Then awareness of cognitive biases, understanding our own mental shortcuts and how to mitigate them for more objective thinking.
Needed more than ever.
Then advanced media literacy. Things like deepfake detection, understanding algorithmic influence, source vetting, resilience against sophisticated disinformation.
Right.
And finally, statistical literacy, interpreting data, understanding probability, correlation versus causation, spotting misleading graphs, engaging critically with numbers.
Okay, that's a strong foundation. What's next?
Next is deliberative excellence, how to actually use critical thinking in dialogue.
So, talking to each other constructively.
Exactly. Principles of constructive deliberation, active listening, respectful disagreement, finding shared values, framing arguments, building consensus. Also, perspective taking, empathy and dialogue to reduce polarization, even basic conflict navigation and mediation skills.
So it's not just being right, it's about engaging effectively.
Precisely.
Hmm.
Then comes ethical and systems reasoning, applying critical thinking to values and long-term consequences.
How so?
Exploring ethical frameworks, using case studies for nuanced reasoning, and an introduction to systems thinking, understanding feedback loops, unintended consequences, leverage points, seeing the bigger picture.
Anticipating broader impacts.
Right. And finally, understanding eudaimonic goals, basically, human flourishing, well-being, and the metrics used to track progress toward them, like HDI, SPI, those sorts of things. Understanding the point of the governance system.
That is incredibly thorough. Does it stop there?
No, it also includes specialized tracks, policy deep dives, skill workshops, maybe prep for specific roles within the system.
And it even suggests ways to encourage this.
Yeah, incentives like Civic Coin rewards for learning, links to assessment systems, just-in-time learning recommendations. It even mentions universal basic income, potentially freeing up time for people to engage in this kind of education.
Wow. It really envisions a society investing heavily in citizen capabilities. How would this actually be delivered?
The focus is on accessibility and engagement, especially for adults. Think bite-sized modules, online platforms, maybe civic labs for hands-on practice, collaborative problem solving.
Micro-credentials, too.
Yes, micro-credentials, badges to recognize achievement, big emphasis on self-direction, relevance to current issues, and collaborative learning that mirrors civic life. Using established adult learning principles, critical thinking models, 21st century skills, all integrated.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive today. We've covered a lot of ground on civic education for direct democracy,
We have, from Finland's holistic model and Montessori's empathy focus.
to the experiential learning of PBL, the necessity of SEL, and media literacy.
The importance of lifelong learning, cross-cultural understanding, and democratic schooling.
And we looked at that detailed framework aiming to build citizens who are critical thinkers, skilled deliberators, ethical reasoners, and collaborative problem solvers.
All essential ingredients, arguably, for a democracy where everyone's participation truly counts.
So as a final thought for our listeners, reflecting on the chapter you shared, which of these ideas may be Finland's broad competencies, Montessori's empathy, PBL's collaboration, media literacy's resilience, or just that continuous growth of lifelong learning, which one resonates most with your own journey toward being a more engaged participant in civic life? And maybe what's one small step you could take even today to cultivate that capability a little more?
A great question to ponder.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.